One of my favorite books I read when I was a teenager was a book titled A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I want to know how many other nerds are in here who've got lots of nerds. So, a book by Douglas Adams. It's kind of a satire, kind of comic novel. And one of my favorite parts of this story, this book, is that the two protagonists travel to encounter this supercomputer named, I think it was named Deep Thought. And this supercomputer in this novel essentially has been wrestling with the question, the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And it's been pondering that question for 7.5 million years. So our two protagonists finally come to find out the answer to the universe and everything. And they're told the answer is 42. The problem is they didn't know what the question was. They spend the rest of the novel trying to figure out what the question is when the ultimate answer is 42. It's a very odd detail, isn't it? Very odd story to tell. But when wrestling with, as we started a few weeks ago, one of the things that we've talked about is that the questions often are far more important than the answers, right? That living with the questions is a far more profound thing to do. A few weeks ago, we wrestled with a question Jesus asked his disciples, or asked people who wanted to become his disciples. He asked them this profound question, what is it you're looking for? Right? And what a great question to live with. And then last week, Judy, as I was absent, wrestled in a story about a woman who was a sinner, who came and ministered to Jesus in the midst of others. And Judy asked the question, who's the faithful one? Who's the best host? Who represents faithfulness? And that's a meaningful, powerful question as well to live with. But our question this morning is an incredible one too, one we should live with. And that question is the question Jesus asked. Where is your faith? Now, I often think we use faith as if it's the answer to all our questions. It's the 42, right? We often throw at people, well, all you got to do is have faith. You'll get through this. You'll be fine. Just have faith, as if that's the answer, right? Without even really wrestling with the question. If only you had faith, this wouldn't be a problem. If you were dealing with grief or you were feeling swamped, if only you had faith, you would be fine. Without really wrestling with the underlying questions. As if faith was some kind of content. Faith was something I fill myself up with, or something I can achieve. And that's a problem, I think, because in many ways, people who are in the midst of grief, people who are in the midst of feeling swamped, feel a little guilty because they don't feel like they have enough of it, faith, to get through it. How many of us have not had that experience in our life? Where I wonder, do I have enough faith to get through this? So Jesus' question this morning, I find troublesome, because I find Jesus troublesome. Where is your faith? And I love this story. I both love and hate this story. So they get into a boat, they start crossing, and then a great windstorm arises. And one of the interesting notes, Jesus, I guess, he gets in the stern of the boat and takes a nap, right? And then the windstorm arises, and I love the line, the waves beat into the boat. and they're beginning to feel swamped. It's a pretty scary situation. And so the disciples, a little swamped and beaten, kind of go and they wake Jesus up, who's sleeping through the storm. And they ask Jesus, do you want us to perish? And I often wonder if Jesus was a little cranky waking up from his nap. You know, I often wonder in this story, because Jesus says, well, why are you so afraid? Where is your faith? And I often imagine that if I was a disciple then, I might be a little bit cheeky disciple, a little bit. And I might say to Jesus, oh my God, these waves are overwhelming us and swamping, and you're taking a nap. And truth be told, I mean, many of us probably have experienced in our lives times when we feel overwhelmed and frightened and scared, and it does feel like Jesus is taking a nap, not paying attention, not present in the ways we would like. And so his question, where is your faith, kind of is a difficult one to come to terms with. Because the truth is, all of us struggle with faith. But only, I think, if we think of faith as something that's kind of intellectual, a belief in a certain idea, only if we think of faith as a belief that this will be all right, only if we think of faith as something that's an answer to a question, when in truth, faith, I think as Jesus understands it, is always a question in and of itself. And I'll tell you what I mean. I'll share with you a story I've shared before, one of the most meaningful stories that I've heard about what it means to have or be faithful. And the story is of a man kind of walking along a cliff, admiring nature, and he trips and falls off the cliff. And as he's falling, he grabs on to some bushes and is hanging off this cliff, his feet dangling in the air, and he's pulling the bush out of the ground, and he knows he's about to fall to his death. And so he does what we all do when we find ourselves feet dangling in the air, all of us scared and frightened and know we're going to fall to our death. We cry out to God. And he cries out to God and he says, God, save me. And he hears a voice come from the sky, and the voice says, my child, do you want to be saved? And the man hanging as he's falling, as it's kind of coming out of the ground, the man says, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. And the voice out of the sky says, do you have faith? And the man says, yes, Lord, save me. And the voice says to him, if you have faith, let go. Faith, more than anything else, is letting go and trusting. Faith, belief in the Bible, is trust in the midst of the storm. And Jesus' question is, who do you trust in life? Who do you trust? And where do you place your trust? Do you trust me even in the midst of the storm? Do you trust me even as the boat feels swamped? Not that I will necessarily still the storm immediately, but do you trust me in the midst of that, and will you let go of your fear and anxiety? And that's the question. It's not an answer, it's a question. Will you let go and trust? I often think that in this passage, I love the line where Jesus stands and says, rebukes the storm. I love that verb, rebukes the storm, as if, why are you messing with things? Please, stop. But I love the line, he says, peace, be still, right? And I wonder if that is as much for the disciples panicking in the boat as it is for the wind blowing them around. That maybe what Jesus says to us, what faith, which calls from us an ability to trust, even in the midst of the waves beating at our boat and swamping us, to trust enough to be peaceful and be still. That the truth is, all of us in life, and especially these past few years, have felt swamped, haven't we? Have felt overwhelmed by the wind and the waves. And the answer isn't necessarily that we'll be protected from the storm. The answer is, do you trust God enough and trust Christ in the midst of the storm to be at peace and to be still? And that's a hard question, brothers and sisters. Easy to answer when things are good, but much harder when the waves are beating at the boat. Peace, be still, trust. I think one of the most meaningful things I'm aware of in groups that are engaged in recovery about addiction issues is in having had close friends who were wrestling with those issues. And they will talk about that one of the challenges in recovery, in a day in which you're trying not to when life feels like it's overwhelming you and you feel like the only way to get through this is through another drink or another pain pill or whatever is needed. And that the challenge in recovery every time is to just let go and trust God will get you through. That day, maybe that moment, that day, that week. Faith is trusting and letting go and believing, as Psalm 139 says, this truth. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I climb to the heavens, you are there. Even if I make my bed in the pit of death, you are there. Your hand holds me. Trust and let go. To God be the glory this day and forevermore. Amen.